Rabbit and Elephant were friends. One day they were very hungry. "We'll have to do some work," said Rabbit, "and then we can get some food." They went together to a farmer who lived nearby, and Rabbit said, "Will you give us some beans to eat if we work in your fields?" "Certainly I will," said the farmer, "but you'll have to work properly, you know." "Oh, of course we will," said Rabbit. Elephant said nothing. When the farmer looked at him, he just made a sort of coughing noise. Now the farmer could see Rabbit and Elephant were really hungry, so he gave them the beans right away, and they put them in the pot to cook while they were working. So there were the beans cooking away in the pot, and there were Rabbit and Elephant working in the fields. Rabbit worked and worked, but Elephant didn't work at all. He kept saying how hot it was, and how hard it was, and that his foot hurt, and that his ear hurt, and that the grass was prickly, and that something was biting him. And he'd keep going away to have a drink, and whenever he came back he said, "Oh, look, you've hardly anything left to do, and look how much I have." So Rabbit thought, "Oh dear, I suppose I'll have to help him, or he'll never get finished." And that's how it happened that when Rabbit had finished all her own work, instead of sitting down and eating her beans, for she was very hungry, she started on Elephant's work instead. Even then, Elephant didn't help. He said he had to go off to get some banana leaves to keep his fodder cool, because he had a headache. Rabbit worked away, hungrier and hotter, till it was all done. Then Elephant came back, and the two of them walked over to their cooking pot and looked at their beans cooking away there. Oh, they did smell good. Rabbit was just going to take some at last when Elephant said, "Don't take them yet. I just have to have a wash. You won't start without me, will you?" So Rabbit, who was so very hungry after all the work she'd done, looked sadly at the bubbling, steaming beans and said politely, "No, of course, I won't start without you, Elephant." Off went Elephant to the river and hid in the tall, wavy grass. And there he quickly undid his 16 buttons, for in those days an elephant's coat still buttoned down the front with 16 buttons. He stepped out of his coat, 1 leg, 2 legs, 3 legs, 4 legs, folded it tidily, and left it on the grass. Well, Rabbit was sitting by the beans, wishing Elephant would hurry up, when suddenly something frightful rushed at her, something enormous. It was as big as an elephant, but so peculiar looking. Rabbit left the beans and ran. It was a little while before she felt brave enough to come back. She came through the grass, stepping very quietly on the tips of her toes. It was all right. The monster had gone, but so had the beans. Soon Elephant came back from the river. He looked very happy. "Are the beans ready?" he called. "Oh, Elephant," said Rabbit, "a terrible thing has happened. A monster has come and eaten all the beans." "I don't believe it," said Elephant. "You've eaten them yourself, you greedy thing." "Oh, no," said Rabbit. "You know I wouldn't." "Well, it can't be helped," said Elephant. "We'll just have to go to bed without any beans." So that was how the first day ended. Next day the farmer gave them more work and more beans. They put them on to cook the same as before, and Rabbit worked hard, so hard, while Elephant did nothing. He said his toe was blistered and his tail had got bent and he had something in his eye. At last Elephant went away to wash, and in the long wavy grass he undid all his 16 buttons and stepped out of his coat, 1 leg, 2 legs, 3 legs, 4 legs, folded it tidily and left it on the grass. And you know what happened next. Rabbit, sitting by the bubbling beans, was chased away by an enormous monster, as big as an elephant, but so peculiar-looking. And when she came back, stepping so quietly on the tips of her toes, the monster had gone, and so had the beans. "I bet you ate them yourself," said Elephant, when Rabbit told him. "No, I didn't," said Rabbit. "You know I didn't." "Well, it can't be helped," said Elephant. "We'll have to go to bed without any beans." "All right," said Rabbit. "But you know what I'm going to do? Before I go to bed, I'm going to look for some wood, and I'm going to make a bow and arrow, and if that monster comes again to take our beans, I'll shoot him dead." Later that evening, Elephant said to Rabbit, "Oh, Rabbit, did you make a bow and arrow?" "Yes, I did," said Rabbit. "You'd better let me have a look at it," said Elephant. "I know a lot about bows and arrows, and I can tell you if it's a good one." So Rabbit brought her bow and arrow, and Elephant looked at it and said, "Not bad at all. There's just a little bit here. I'll make it right for you." And he got out his knife and cut away for a bit, and at last he said, "That's better. That'll be all right now. I'm glad you showed me that." And then they went to bed, and that was how the second day ended. Next day they went to work again while the beans cooked in the pot. Rabbit worked hard, Elephant made excuses. Then, just the same as before, the monster came rushing at Rabbit as she sat by the cooking pot, waiting for Elephant to come back from the river. But this time, Rabbit picked up her bow and arrow and shot at him. Crack! The bow broke. Wasn't that just the place where Elephant had been cutting it with his knife? Well, off ran Rabbit as fast as she could, with the monster after her. When she came back, all the beans were gone. "Did you catch the monster?" called Elephant. "No, the bow broke." "Really? I am surprised." And Elephant hid his smile with his curly trunk. Rabbit didn't notice Elephant smiling, but she had suddenly begun to wonder what an elephant would look like if he undid all the 16 buttons of his coat and stepped right out of it, 1 leg, 2 legs, 3 legs, 4 legs. She wondered about this all evening, for by now she was very hungry indeed. The next morning she got up very early and made herself a new bow and arrow and hid them in the grass. Everything happened the same as before. Rabbit worked hard, Elephant did nothing. He was tired, he felt sick, he was thirsty. Off he went to the river at last to have his wash, and in a minute or two, on came the roaring monster. But this time, as soon as Rabbit saw the roaring monster, she picked up her new bow and arrow from the grass and aimed very carefully. "Oh!" shouted Elephant. "You horrid thing! You've hurt me! What did you do that for? Fancy being so mean just for a few beans! I'll probably die." But Rabbit was very angry. "A fine friend you are," she said. "You won't die, it's only a prick. Now go and wash yourself properly this time and put on your coat, and don't you dare play any tricks on me again." So Elephant went slowly back to the river and really did wash himself this time and put on his coat and did up all the 16 buttons and behaved properly. And Rabbit sat down by the bubbling, steaming beans and, at last, ate them all up.
Tienes el alma de provinciana, hueles a limpia raza temprana. Ahora la cara fresca del río, son mil palomas tu caserío. Guadalajara, sabes a pura tierra mojada.
One day, Mr. Wolf was out walking when some big dogs began to chase him. They chased and they chased and they nearly caught him. But luckily, Mr. Wolf suddenly saw a cave in the mountain. It was just big enough for him to get inside, and he dashed in quickly. The cave was too small for the big dogs to get in, so they had to stay outside. Mr. Wolf panted and panted till he got his breath back. And then when he felt better, he thought he'd been very clever to get into this cave, so he began to talk out loud. "Feet, feet," he said, "what did you do to help me to get into this cave?" "Why, we jumped over the rocks and the rivers, and we brought you here," said his 4 feet. "So you did," said Mr. Wolf. "Good, Feet." "And what did you do?" he said to his 2 ears. "What did you do, Ears, to help me?" "Why, we listened to the right and we listened to the left," said his 2 ears. "We heard where the dogs were coming, so we could tell you which was the right way to go." "So you did," said the wolf. "Good, Ears." "And what did you do?" said Mr. Wolf to his 2 eyes. "What did you do to help me?" "Why, we looked," said his 2 eyes. "We pointed out the right way. We found this cave." "So you did," said Mr. Wolf. "Good eyes." Then Mr. Wolf said, "What a fine fellow I am to have such good feet, such good ears, and such good eyes. I am clever." And he leaned over to pat himself on the back. When he did this, he saw his tail. "Oh," said Mr. Wolf, "ho-ho! And what did you do, Tail? I bet you did nothing at all. You just hung there on the end of me, expecting me to carry you along, and you did nothing at all to help. Why, I bet you nearly let the dogs get hold of me. What did you do?" And the Tail was so cross at being spoken to like this that he said, "I'll tell you what I did. I waved to the dogs to tell them to come on and catch you." "You bad Tail," shouted Mr. Wolf. "You bad, bad Tail." And he turned around and bit it as hard as he could. Then he shouted very angrily, "Get out of here at once, you bad old Tail. Get out of this cave." And he pushed his tail out of the cave. But when he pushed his tail out, of course, he went out with it. And the big dogs were waiting outside, listening to every silly word, and they caught him.
Conservas agua del pozo y en tus mujeres lo más hermoso. Guadalajara, Guadalajara, tienes el alma más mexicana.
One day Mr. Fox was digging by his tree when he found a big fat bumblebee, so he put it in his bag. Then he walked and he walked and he walked till he came to a house. And in the house there was a little black woman sweeping the floor. "Good morning," said Mr. Fox. "Good morning," said the little black woman. "May I leave my bag here? I want to go to Squantum's house." "Yes, certainly." "Very well, then," said Mr. Fox, "but mind you don't look in my bag." "Oh, I won't," said the little black woman. So off went Mr. Fox, trot, 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 to Squantum's house. As soon as he was gone, I'm afraid the little black woman did look in the bag. She just peeped in, and out flew the big fat bumblebee, and the little black woman's cock-a-doodle-doo ran and gobbled him up. Presently back came Mr. Fox. He looked at his bag and he said, "Where is my big fat bumblebee?" And the little black woman said, "I'm dreadfully sorry, but I'm afraid I did look in your bag, and the big fat bumblebee flew out, and my cock-a-doodle-doo gobbled him up." "Oh, really?" said Mr. Fox. "Then I shall take your cock-a-doodle-doo instead." And he took the little black woman's cock-a-doodle-doo and put that in the bag instead. And then off he went. He walked and he walked and he walked until he came to a house. And in this house there was a little red woman darning socks. "Good morning," said Mr. Fox. "Oh, good morning," said the little red woman. "May I leave my bag here while I go to Squintum's house?" "Yes, certainly," said the little red woman. "Very well, then," said Mr. Fox, "but mind you don't look in my bag." "I won't," said the little red woman. So off went Mr. Fox, trot, 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 to Squintum's house. As soon as he was gone, I'm afraid the little red woman did look in the bag. She just peeped in, and out flew the cock-a-doodle-doo, and the little red woman's pig chased him down the lane. Presently back came Mr. Fox. He looked at his bag and he said, "Ho, ho, where is my cock-a-doodle-doo?" And the little red woman said, "I'm very sorry, but I did open your bag, and your cock-a-doodle-doo flew out, and my pig chased him down the lane." "Very well," said Mr. Fox, "I shall take your pig instead." And he put the little red woman's pig in the bag. Then off he went. He walked and he walked and he walked till he came to a house, and in this house there was a little yellow woman washing the dishes. "Good morning," said Mr. Fox. "Oh, good morning," said the little yellow woman. "May I leave my bag here while I go to Squintum's house?" "Yes, certainly." "Very well, then, but mind you don't look in my bag." "No, I won't," said the little yellow woman. Then off went Mr. Fox, trot, 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 to Squintum's house. As soon as he was gone, the little yellow woman did look in the bag. She just peeped in, and out jumped the pig, and the little yellow woman's little boy took a stick and chased him right out of the house. Pretty soon, back came Mr. Fox. He looked at his bag and he said, "Dear me, where is my pig?" And the little yellow woman said, "I'm frightfully sorry, but I'm afraid I did look in your bag, and the pig jumped out, and my little boy took a stick and chased him right out of the house." "My goodness," said Mr. Fox, "then I shall have to take your little boy instead." And he took the little yellow woman's little boy and put him in the bag. Then he walked and he walked and he walked until he came to a house. And in this house there was a little green woman making gingerbread. At one side of her sat 4 little girls, and on the other side sat a big black dog. "Good morning," said Mr. Fox. "Good morning," said the little green woman. "May I leave my bag here while I go to Squintum's house?" "Yes, certainly." "Very well, then, but mind you don't look in my bag." Then off went Mr. Fox, trot, 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 to Squintum's house. Now, as soon as he was gone, the lovely smell of the gingerbread came out of the oven, and it smelled so good, so good, that all the 4 little girls called out, "Oh, Mummy, Mummy, may we have some gingerbread?" And the little boy in the bag called out, "Oh, Auntie, Auntie, may I have some gingerbread?" Well, of course, as soon as the little green woman heard a little boy calling out of the bag, she undid the bag at once, and out jumped the little boy. And so that Mr. Fox wouldn't notice anything, the little green woman put the big black dog in the bag instead. Presently, back came Mr. Fox. He looked at the bag, and it still looked all bumpy and knobbly, so he thought it was just the same as before. He picked it up, and off he went. He walked and he walked and he walked till he came to a good place to sit down. Then he sat down and he untied the bag, and out jumped the big black dog. He was so hungry because he hadn't had any gingerbread yet that he gobbled up Mr. Fox completely. And back in the little house, the little green woman took the gingerbread out of the oven, and the 4 little girls and the 1 little boy sat down at the table, and they ate it all up, except for 1 piece that they saved for their mummy because she'd baked it, and 1 piece that they gave to the dog when he came home for eating up Mr. Fox.
Kabato kamawa tiba muna kapala kapola tumi makasani mocha kuseba makaluba kibeto
Now, Anansi was a spider. He had a friend called Mouse, and they both had someone who wasn't a friend at all. That was Cassander the cat. Anansi and Mouse were frightened of Cassander. Cassander had sharp claws and sharp teeth, and she could pounce very quickly. She could see in the dark when you didn't know she was there, and she made the most horrible waily noise when she felt fierce and waved her tail in a frightening way. But Cassander had a Ducanu tree, a pudding tree. And although Anansi and Mouse didn't like Cassander, they did like puddings that grew on trees. Whenever they went past Cassander's house, Anansi would say to Mouse, "I would love one of these puddings from Cassander's tree." And Mouse would say, "So would I." Cassander looked after her tree very carefully. She dug all round it so that air could get in. She cleared all the weeds away, and she watered it all round. The puddings grew very big and round and sweet, and the bigger and rounder and sweeter they grew, the more Anansi and Mouse wanted them. At last one night Anansi whispered to Mouse, "Let's go to Cassander's garden and take some puddings. I'll climb up the tree and cut off the puddings with my sharp knife, and you'll stay at the bottom and tell me if Cassander is coming." So they crept softly in the dark into Cassander's garden, and Mouse stayed at the bottom of the tree listening while Anansi climbed to the top. He took out his knife and cut off a pudding. It fell to the ground, plop. When Mouse and Anansi heard that plop, they were frightened. What a loud noise it made! It woke Cassander up in her bed in the little house, and she said out loud, "What's happening in my garden? What's happening to my puddings? The wind must be blowing them down." And she turned over and went to sleep again. Anansi and Mouse waited a moment, and then Anansi cut another pudding. It fell to the ground. "Plop!" it said. It sounded even louder than before, and Mouse and Anansi were very frightened. Cassander woke up and said, "What's happening in my garden? What's happening to my puddings? Oh, they're falling off the tree all by themselves. Oh, they must be too ripe." Then she turned over and went to sleep again. Mouse and Anansi waited a moment. Then Anansi took out his knife and cut another pudding. It fell to the ground. "Plop!" it said. This time it was even louder than both the other plops, because it was a very big and very heavy pudding indeed, and Mouse and Anansi were very frightened. It was such a loud plop that Cassander got right out of bed and said, "I shall see what is happening to my puddings." Out came Cassander into the garden. Mouse saw her 2 eyes shining in the dark. "Oh dear," said Mouse, "I must tell Anansi." But he didn't want to call out, "Anansi, Anansi," because then Cassander would know who it was who was stealing her puddings. So instead he called out, "Sealing Thomas! Sealing Thomas!" He thought of Sealing Thomas because Anansi was a spider and often walked on the ceiling. And then, in a flash, off went Mouse on his trickly little feet, and Cassander never saw him. Cassander looked this way and that, but all she could see were 3 puddings lying on the ground. Anansi was curled up in a ball, quiet as quiet in the leaves of the pudding tree. Cassander looked at the 3 puddings. She walked all round them one way, and she walked all round them the other way, and she waved her tail and went waily-waily in a fierce voice. "Someone has been cutting those puddings," she said. But she couldn't see anyone at all. So she picked up the puddings and went back to the house. As soon as she was gone, Anansi jumped down from the tree. "Plop!" "There's another pudding gone," shouted Cassander, and she dashed out of the house again. But there wasn't any pudding on the grass. Nothing to see at all. Anansi had scuttled away as fast as he could, and he was nearly home. "What a strange thing," said Cassander. "A plop, but no pudding." So she went back to bed again, and every now and then she woke up and said, "A plop, but no pudding." And she never found out what had made the last plop of all.
Quiero que la